New intel today about what went down in Butler County, Pennsylvania. So apparently our Secret Service is like the worst Secret Service ever, because they don't even pick up radio calls and they don't demand to get more resources. Now, it's possible that the Biden administration had a little something to do with that. In fact, Josh Hawley is out with a very severe letter. He sent this here to the acting director of the Secret Service. I want to share it with you because he basically said that he's gotten whistleblower intelligence that says, you know what? They tried very hard to be able to get more resources there in Pennsylvania, but they couldn't actually get them because according, and I'm quoting here from the letter from Josh Hawley, according to the whistleblower, the lead advance agent for the protectee trip typically submits a manpower request to the local field office. This normally includes the number of personnel and other security assets needed for the event and is submitted to the U.S. Secret Service Office of Protection Operations manpower for final approval. According to the allegations, officials within this office preemptively informed the Pittsburgh field office that the Butler rally was not going to receive additional security resources because, again, I'm quoting, Trump is a former president and not the incumbent president or vice president. According to the whistleblower, the manpower request did not include extra security resources because agents on the ground were told not to ask for them in the first place. Oh, wow. So they're like self-censoring here, right? They can't go and ask for the necessary resources because they're being told there's no way in HOO you're going to get them. The letter goes on to say that, Senator Hawley wants some answers. The allegations come despite your testimony, he says to the contrary, before the Senate on July 30th. Remember when this guy went up there? By the way, the woman who was in charge, who somehow didn't think any of this was her fault or that, there was anything really wrong. I mean, you nearly took out the former president of the United States. Thank you very much. The current head of the GOP ticket. And she tried to stay in the gig. Oh, they got rid of her. This guy came in. Anyway, these allegations come despite your testimony to the contrary, he writes, before the Senate on July 30th. When asked whether former President Trump's team had been denied resources, you stated, quote, if you're talking about Butler, Pennsylvania, all assets requested were approved. Oh, well, what if you already sort of circumvented that and went around things by calling and saying, don't ask for those assets? It is our understanding that Dr. Jill Biden, who was attending a dinner that night, got a whole lot of assets. She had like triple the amount of the agents, perhaps quadruple the amount of agents there at that dinner than Donald Trump, who clearly is kind of a big deal target. I mean, I'm just saying, in the scheme of things, and he's doing this open air rally, they weren't going to approve any for that Butler trip. But you see, guys, what does it come back to? Maybe they didn't want Donald Trump doing an outdoor open air rally. Maybe they didn't want to give him resources for anything because they wanted him to go away. They did not want him to be running for president again. This is obviously an unusual circumstance, an unusual time. As I said, we are on the front lines of history. Well, guess what? He lived. He made it. And he stood up and said, fight. And I think a lot of people are answering that rallying call, which is going to be terrifying to the left right now. Hence the quick switcheroo, putting Kamala Harris, whose name not even Bill Clinton can pronounce, in the seat. Meanwhile, let's be honest, okay? Shall we be honest? There are questions that need to be asked about the Secret Service itself. Like, why wasn't it able to do? You got one job, guys, one single job in the world, and that is to protect the asset being Donald Trump. And you failed, like spectacularly. The only thing that would have been worse is if he hadn't been looking at that chart on the number of people pouring into the country. If he hadn't been looking at that chart, we wouldn't have Donald Trump here today. So what was going on with the Secret Service? I mean, reportedly, people on the ground, you've seen the video, I've showed you. They're like, wait a second, there's a guy up there. And the local law enforcement knew there was a guy. And yet somehow Secret Service was oblivious. This is becoming increasingly a new problem, as word has just come out that the local law enforcement on their walkie-talkies We're talking all about that guy, and somehow the Secret Service never tuned in. Watch.
Yeah, Kate, a local official is telling us that if Secret Service had picked up these radios, they likely would have heard a warning that went out 3 minutes before the shooter opened fire in Donald Trump's direction. And that warning was about a man on the roof. And that's been a prevailing question over the last month as various investigative bodies have been trying to determine how the shooter managed to get a clear line of sight at Donald Trump on July 13th at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. And look, these radios were intended to establish a direct line of communication or at least inform Secret Service about what local police officers on the ground were discussing in real time. It appears, according to the Butler County District Attorney, that those radios were never picked up by Secret Service, which really underscores more broadly this disjointed communication structure that sources are describing to us that Secret Service has used not just leading up to the Butler PA rally, but for years now. They actually do not ever have any sort of direct communication with local officers on the ground. Sources saying that instead they rely on a really disjointed, almost game of telephone between a series of liaisons and command structures to pass messages back and forth, that really being a core problem, and how critical information was lost on July 13th as this crisis unfolded. And look, the Department of Homeland Security is looking into all of the security failures around the July 13th rally and the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and is explicitly looking at the communication breakdowns that day. I'm sure that they are going to think very hard about implementing some of the tools they haven't implemented yet, and also trying to revisit this idea of how local police officers interact with the Secret Service at these large security events.
Yeah, I mean, clearly something's really messed up. Take a look at this graphic again, and let's just go through it. Witnesses saw a person matching the shooter's description carrying a rifle outside the rally. Okay, so witnesses saw that. Senior law enforcement official has said that the alert went out before the rally about a suspicious person. How is it that the Secret Service isn't on high alert because there's a suspicious person in the vicinity? The local police radio alert about a man on a roof, my gosh, minutes before the guy ever fired. I mean, it's bizarre. Secret Service sniper shoots, kills shooter 15 seconds after, ladies and gentlemen, he opened fired. Why are you allowing him to be in the position of open firing? I mean, I don't get it. Did they think it was like a big party? You know, a lot of people think something else, a whole lot more sinister. I'll just say this. You know what? They didn't do their jobs. None of them did. You need a whole new team. I know Trump likes them. I'm sorry, you need a whole new team, okay? Because this team, they can't get it done. And they get their, you know what, up there. Well, I won't be crude. But it makes me angry. It makes me angry because you think about what could have been and how dangerous that moment in time was. Super dangerous.